Okay, and we'll start off with the first question, and I think this was a question for Nick. So it was, how does redundancy notice work when someone is on furlough?
Okay, so redundancy notice on furlough. Well, evidently, when somebody's on furlough, it's still possible for redundancy procedure to begin and take place and conclude while someone is on furlough. And usually when someone is given notice that they'll be made redundant, the length of time that they're given as notice can be determined either by statute or by the terms of their contract, if that's more generous. So for example, if someone has worked for a company for 3 years, then by law, determined by statute, they would get 3 weeks redundancy notice. However, if in the terms of their contract, it states that the employer should give them 4 weeks notice of termination of the contract, then it would rise to 4 weeks. The employee would always get the longer of the two options. So, and employees would be paid obviously for their notice period. And as I was saying, the notice period can be served out while on furlough. So that would mean that for the duration of the notice period, if the employee continues to be on furlough, then the employer can claim 80% of the wages that are on that they're paying during that notice period. Now, the employee themselves should be receiving 100% of their pre-furlough wages while they're serving their notice period. Now, obviously, this has never happened before. In terms of employment law, the word furlough has no legal meaning in the UK, and we're having to sort of pave the path as we tread it, because this has never happened before. But it's pretty well backed up that if someone has statutory redundancy notice of a certain number of weeks, then for those weeks they should be paid 100%. There is some conflicting opinion around the contractual notice portion of a redundancy notice period and whether that should be paid at 80% or 100%. I would advise our members, wherever possible, to pay all of the redundancy notice period at 100%, purely because this is uncharted territory, and if the 80% for the additional contractual notice is challenged, we don't know which way that's likely to go in a tribunal, for example. So although redundancy notice pay can be claimed back through the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme, pylon, so payment in lieu of notice, payments, that's where you would give a lump sum of notice pay in one shot and not have to, not require your employee to serve out their notice physically. That can't be claimed back through CJRS. So although if you're having someone technically stay on your books and live out their notice with you, then that can be claimed back, 80% of that, or whatever percentage it is, depending on what stage of the flexible furlough scheme we're at the time, because obviously it's going to be reducing as time goes on. But yes, pylon payments can't be claimed back. So that's the kind of the main aspects of how redundancy notice interacts with furlough. I don't know if anyone's got a supplementary question or had a more specific thing they wanted to know about it.
Can I just ask you something, Nick? If a company has their electricians, approved electrician, labourer, and then they just, they are in the unfortunate position where they need to let the labourer go on, by redundancy terms, do they have to do anything like you know how you normally have to do like a matrix or something like that, and a scoring and stuff. Is there anything they have to do, or can they just say your post is going?
Okay, so it depends on what the business decision has been. So if it's the case that the employer has decided or has seen that it's necessary for there to be one fewer electrician or one fewer technician or one fewer labourer, and there's more than one person who holds that job, then yes, they should be going into the pot and scored against each other. Now, actually, on the Select website, we have some quite detailed guidance, which gives examples of how to score people against each other. I would recommend looking at that guidance, because what we don't want to do is accidentally have a scoring system which is in any way discriminatory, because that would lead to challenges. In the current climate, folk could be seen to be more motivated than usual to challenge decisions which have not gone well for them. So what we need to be absolutely sure of is that any redundancy procedure is full and fair and free of discrimination of any kind. So when we look at the materials that are on the Select website, there are some examples of what would be classed as fair and appropriate scoring criteria. So, and I'll put a link up to our redundancy materials in a mo. Now, usually it's the case, most often it's the case that redundancy pools are determined by job title. That's what we most often find. However, if you feel that there is a particular reason why people with the same job title should be split further into different tranches of person, then as long as you feel that you can back that up, and as long as you feel that you'd be able to defend that decision as having been fair and proportionate, then it's possible that you could further narrowly divide your employees up into categories. But usually, and it usually wouldn't come in for any challenge if you did just split people by job title. Any other questions around that just now?
Lorna, is that okay, Diane?
Yes, that's lovely, thank you.
See, Lorna has put a question on chat. So an employee with less than 2 years service, are they still entitled to redundancy or notice payment should the position no longer be viable?
So a person with less than 2 years completed service wouldn't be entitled to a redundancy payment, but they would be entitled to notice, whether that's statutory notice as afforded to them through law, or through their contract, which may be longer.
Is that okay, Lorna? Okay. Okay, thanks. Anything else for Nick around redundancy? Nope. Yes, I see. We've got another one from Lorna. So if an employee was employed to work with a specific client, would that then further categorise them for consideration?
That's an interesting one, because there has been some recent case law. I say recent, I think it was 2018 to be fair, but there was some case law, and it's gone back and forward through tribunal, then appeal tribunal. It can be possible that if it can be argued that their job existed because of the existence of the client, but I would be very careful about splitting along those lines, because it would almost certainly be challenged, and then it's down to how well it can be defended, and also how interchangeable the skills that are needed to carry out the work with that particular client are with any other person that holds a similar job title. So but yeah, we can have a chat about that. If it's something specific, we can pick that up offline. But it could be possible, but it's been challenged very in a high profile way, so care needed. Alert.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. Okay, Lorna? Okay. Okay, thanks for that.